Well, hello everybody. This is Scott Roberts here on the OpenGOTO Community Live with Kent Marts and Jerry Hubbell, and we have a good show for you today. Yesterday we went over the Windows application of ExploreStars and showed what happens when you don't set up things correctly, as as we did yesterday. But we showed how to solve those problems and get the system up and running. Um, Today we have, we looked at questions that were on the OpenGOTO Community Forum on groups.io, and there were a couple of things that were brought up. One of them, Kent had mentioned, was a person with a Meridian flip in ExploreStars. Can you give us a little bit more?
Yeah, the question was, am I? Yeah, okay, I'm not muted. The question was, previously he had done a Meridian flip in ExploreStars, and now he can't get it to work, and he was wondering what was going on. Jerry, you're probably the best one to field that.
There's a lot of stuff that can go on. I mean, I don't know if that's enough information
Maybe not
for
enough
me to
information.
figure it out.
Yeah, right.
I mean, there's so what did he say? It just would not do the Meridian flip at all
Yeah, basically.
on ExploreStars?
Yes.
So the way ExploreStars is designed to work is that when you get right at the Meridian, it will do the flip. So if your counter bar or counterweight bar is horizontal and you're on the pointing to the east of the Meridian, as soon as you get past that to the western side, it should automatically do the pure flip. Now, if there's really only a couple things. If you don't have that condition, if you're not if the counterweight bar is not horizontal, then you're not near the Meridian. That's one thing to keep in mind. So if that's the case, then so there must be some other indication making you think it should do a pure flip. So the pure flip doesn't actually occur until the counterweight bar is horizontal and it's actually crossing the Meridian. It doesn't do it early, and it will not do it late in ExploreStars by design. Now the ASCOM driver is different. The ASCOM driver does not control the Meridian flip directly. It's controlled by whatever ASCOM client program that you're using to navigate the sky or to control the mount. The ASCOM with the ASCOM driver, the PMC-Eight is happy as can be to just cross the Meridian and continue to track past the Meridian. That's important for astrophotographers, because if they got a sequence of images going on, they don't want it to be stopped in the middle of an image and then it all of a sudden perform a Meridian flip. So that's controlled by the user with the ASCOM client.
Yeah.
So the question is, the problem was that I was expecting the Meridian flip to happen, but it didn't. Polar alignment was done properly with ASI air, and also a 3-star alignment was performed. I've read that ExploreStars is capable to do the Meridian flip, but I guess I'm missing something here. Today, also tested on Orion during the day, and the motor housings almost hit each other. I remember that in the past, the flip has worked as I tested this.
So he's using an ASI air. So is he using ExploreStars along with another computer system at the same time?
That's what it seems like.
That doesn't work. That absolutely does not work. It's either the computer control over the ASCOM driver or ND driver with the ASI air, or it's ExploreStars by itself, standalone. You can't combine the two operations.
Might as well just answer the question right now.
Might as well. Might as well. Why wait?
Why wait? Just one more thing for me to do later.
Okay, so let's move on then. Jerry, you had some comments about the read some comments about the configuration manager and people wanting it on other platforms.
Right. So previously, I've talked about the configuration manager. I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop.
Yeah.
And
we have Some of our regulars on tonight. We got Mike Wiesner and Bergman Scooter. Everybody saying hi. Mike says he's lurking, and Gary Palmer, UK, says hello. Gary's going to be on with us tomorrow with his program. So,
Oh, nice.
yeah, I'm excited about that.
So let me go back to the original message here.
Okay.
So James Nichols, who just received his IXOS 100, and he's going to use Linux for his control system with the Indy platform, Indy drivers with K-stars and other things that run on Linux.
Okay.
And he's asking the question about how do I update the firmware? Has anybody done this? And so there's a couple ways. If you just want to run the Windows program as it is, the configuration manager, you can load a program or an environment called Wine, which is Windows on Linux, basically is what it is. It's an emulator that runs Windows on Linux, and that's one way to do it. And then, but his question is where came down to how can I actually write code or have code available on Linux native that will do the firmware update. And so Bob Hoskins and we've been going back and forth a little bit, and I found that there is open source software from Parallax. Parallax created the propeller chip that's a microcontroller that we have in the PMC-Eight, and we use a compiled executable and a DLL that they created on Windows to do the actual firmware update. We thought that was the best and most reliable method for us to use in the configuration manager, and Chris can talk more about this later when we have him on next week, Chris Moses.
All right.
On the configuration manager, because we wanted it to work every time, and we know that works every time. That's what we do when we load our own firmware. But the source code's available out there for it, but it's written in an obscure language that maybe some people don't know. It's called Pascal. It's called Open or Object-Oriented Pascal, and it's not manufactured. It's advertised under. It's called Delphi as the development environment that is run on. So the code that's available under this, there's if you look in the forum, there's a.
I think I used a long time ago. I used a Delphi client to do some updates to other things years ago.
Right.
And maybe it still exists.
It's been over 20 years. Borland created Pascal compiler back in the 80s and 90s, and Object Pascal, and I used that quite a bit back then. But so the code is available in Delphi 6. It was built under Delphi 6. Now, I just recently, about a month or two ago, I was looking at this also, and there's a community version of Delphi that's available to download to load the system on there. And
is there a link for that?
Let me show you. So if you're looking at my desktop, this is what it looks like when there's a bunch of gobbledygook, I'm sure, for a lot of people, but this is the actual.
Me.
Yes, that's right. So this is the actual program that was developed under Pascal to do this firmware load.
Okay.
So it's available. All the source code is available on the Parallax website, and I've got the links there in the forum. Right here, Parallax downloads, propellant library, and executable source code. So let me see, I think I've got it. There it is right there. So I'm going to post this. I'm going to paste it to the chat, and then you can paste it into the Facebook thing if you want, Scott.
Oh, into our Skype chat here?
Yeah, let me...
Yes.
You can copy it from the Skype chat into the Facebook chat.
Let's see.
As I get it to you.
There it is. All right. Propellant library executable source code.
So we're looking at that, and basically this is a project that would be ripe for the OpenGOTO community to do, to create a cross-platform configuration manager based on this as a firmware loader and the other features that Chris has built into the Windows configuration manager.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So that brought me on to the next subject. Are there any questions about this from the audience?
Yeah, Jerry, I'll come up with one. Does that mean that if this was done correctly, the platform-specific configuration manager we currently use would become unnecessary?
No. People that still use Windows would want to still use the Windows version, but we would offer, just like we do our ExploreStars, where we offer it under Android or iOS, we would offer the configuration manager on maybe Mac OS and on Linux.
Okay.
Along with Windows.
It wouldn't replace it. It would just supplement it.
Right. It'd be another platform for people to use.
Okay.
So
Bill Black says he remembers Pascal, whiles and wins. I'm not getting the reference, but I'm sure he's making a joke there somewhere. Not sure why, but so
I'm not sure what that references to.
Yeah. There's let's see who's on. Gary Palmer says hi. Peter Visima says hello from Canada. Hello, Peter.
Yeah.
Bill Black, as I said, Stephen Paul Romero, and he says yay to something. I assume he's saying yay to the Parallax compiler and the possibilities it offers Mac users. And me being a Mac user since 1984, I know the feeling to have to cross-platform and not want to go to Windows, but 'tis the way it goes, because that's where the bulk of the vast majority of astronomy programs reside, on Windows.
Right, but that's changing. I mean, the more we can do, but it takes a lot of resources that a lot of small companies may not have, like us.
We have
to dedicate. Although we do support ExploreStars, and but we try to make it available to the community so that the community can help support everybody else in the community, right, to develop these things. And that's really the bulk of astronomy software has been developed under that paradigm where people freely give of their time and effort to develop all kinds of free software, as we've seen. I mean, the vast majority of astronomers use free software that's available, that has been created by this community.
That's true. So you look the imaging software, the planetarium programs, all of this stuff. Even from the professional world, the stuff that NASA has given us, and
yes,
it's just on and on and on. And so it's an amazing community from that standpoint, that you have some, truly brilliant people out there that are exceptionally gifted, that offer this kind of stuff. It does take some, mentorship. It does take people taking you under their wing. But if you want to get into really a truly extraordinary community, then there's few other communities like amateur astronomy. So, and I think it's the reason why a lot of professional astronomers also choose to have to include themselves in amateur astronomy as well. It's so rich,
Yep, exactly.
It's so rich. Well, okay. So let's move on to another subject here. we have been getting enhancement requests for the PMC-Eight, and
Right.
so I think that the list is kind of growing large at this point. Why don't we take those a few at a time? We'll talk about a few maybe each day, and so why don't you, unless you have something else that you'd like to
No,
mention, Kent or
Kent
Derek?
can. Yeah,
Yep.
Kent has something.
Yeah. I
No,
also wanted
on,
to to recognize some people. We're simulcasting, so I've gotten a little bit better at simulcasting even as of today. So William Beasley, who had ordered an Explorer or one of the Exos 2 GTs. This is not a PMC-8 model, but more of the hand controller go-to systems that we've offered before. He's saying hello. James, the astrophotographer, keep up with these videos, so helpful. Thank you. Thank you. Brian Murphy says, thank you guys for doing these informative videos. So we want to thank you all for watching, and supporting this. And if you like these programs, like they always say, like and share and subscribe. So,
Right.
but
Right.
let's jump into the first few enhancement items there, Jerry.
Well, so I created this subgroup about 2 weeks ago, and I actually started off by adding a couple items also at the top of the list here. Right now we've got this. I just posted this document on the forum. It's available in the main forum under the Files section. I'm sorry, under the Feature Request subgroup. I'm sorry, the Feature Request subgroup forum under the Files section, and I'll keep that up to date every 3 or 4 days as new items get submitted onto the forum. So the first one I have here is in the firmware. Right now, you have to load two different firmwares. One that has the communications watchdog enabled, and the other one has the communications watchdog disabled. So I need to go ahead and add a command to toggle it, like we toggle the communications channel Wi-Fi to serial and back, and then also the way we on the iXOS 100, the way we toggle between UDP and TCP. This will be another toggle command that will toggle the communications watchdog on and off. That was the first thing I added to this list. The next thing, is there any questions about that? That's pretty straightforward. People are asking, why do I have to load this other firmware to do this? Why can't it be, like I just said? And there's no reason it can't be, and that's why I'm going to do it. The next item was submitted by Bruce Bradley. He'd like to be able to sort the catalog by right ascension in the ExploreStars app. It's an enhancement.
I've got a similar one in mind. I just thought of it's similar to that, but do a nearby tour function. So wherever you are, you can sort it into things that are close by, so you don't have to make long slews. You can sort of work your way across the sky, which would be similar to what the catalog sort by RA.
I think I'm kind of thinking that something like that is already in either the Android or the iOS version. I'm trying to think. Well, maybe I'm thinking wrong. I think if you select, it depends on how you do a query. I think, but I have to check on that to see. That may already be in place, but not on the Windows version. So we would have to add that. So if you want to submit that suggestion, Kent, that'd be great on the forum.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no other questions about that one. That's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
The other thing that's related, there's a few ExploreStars suggestions that are kind of related to that. This one is somewhat like that, where Cohen suggested that we provide a favorites section for objects. So you can take, if you select an object, you can have a button to say add this to my favorites, which is a great suggestion.
Yep.
Um,
We're starting to get some other questions here too.
okay.
So I'm gonna. This is on YouTube. Simulcasting is fun because you get to watch two different social media platforms here. Adrian Zoda says, "Hello. How could I align the mount even if the 4 stars and the scope do not fit perfectly in the frame?" Now, Adrian, I'm not sure exactly what you're describing. If you're,
Hi, Scott.
you know the answer to this.
Yes, I get this question periodically, and from
All
the other
right.
ways it gets asked, I can answer it.
Okay, go ahead.
The question is about the polar finder scope.
Okay.
And there's the 4-star as for 4 stars in a trapezoid shaped in the polar finder scope that look like the Little Dipper or something. And strangely, there are some stars near Polaris that do look similar.
Mm-hmm.
However, that asterism is called Octans trapezoid. Octans is a circumpolar constellation in the southern hemisphere.
That's right.
And that star asterism is used by our southern users
Hemisphere. That's right.
in the southern hemisphere.
Right.
And so
we have to have both
people,
patterns in the polar scope to do northern and southern hemisphere.
correct. And so, Adrian, you just need to ignore that. The thing to use is the cross that marks the North Celestial Pole and the line that comes down and then the circle where Polaris goes. And to work that, you need to understand where the hour angle of Polaris is in relation to what time it is you're trying to align the scope. Rotate the scope and the right angle in right ascension to match that hour angle.
Yeah, you're turning the whole mount in
the whole right ascension
while you're looking through the polar scope.
Correct. And line it up and use azimuth and altitude to move the mount in little increments until you get it in that circle.
Right.
Didn't you say, Scott, we're going to have another episode about polar alignment during the day, and then also probably how to use the polar alignment scope?
You and I discussed that a little bit earlier, and it was like, okay, we're going to have to, I think, just kind of go through the motions of shooting that video, because we need to look through the polar scope. We need to show a representation of what the sky looks like. Okay. So just to watch somebody sit there and level a tripod and move a couple of knobs and talk, I mean, I don't know. I don't think that's going to get it, right?
No, it's got to be a really
that's not going to make
video.
it all click for somebody, If they were sitting there with us doing it, yes. So I think that what we'll have to do is we'll have to show some video simulation, okay, which we can probably do in the studio, and then I can run that clip just for that part of it, and then go from there. So it's going to require something like that. Let me ask.
Come on, Scott. Let's walk on the wild side and do it live.
We will do it live. We will. We walk on the wild side every day. Okay, so let's see. Another comment from Book 66 on YouTube. I'm just looking into my first scope. Doesn't hurt to study up for my next level stuff. That's true. That's true. So certainly the thing that you'll learn is that the advanced astronomers or people who've been into it for a while are always happy to come back down and help a beginner get started, because you know what? So the most fun part of amateur astronomy is when you knew almost nothing and you were getting started, and then every aspect of it was absolutely brand new. So that was really cool. But the other cool part is even when you're into it for a long time, Jerry's been into it. We all three have been into it for decades. There's always a new question. There's always a new discovery. There's always something very, very cool that's happening every day in astronomy. So you're not going to get tired of this. Don't think that if somebody that tells me, well, I've already seen all the things I can see with my telescope, and I've done all the stuff I can do in astronomy, and I've moved on. And I have heard that a few times, okay? And I am always stunned, that they have somehow exhausted this. So, anyways,
Right. It's a journey. It's not the end goal.
that's true.
No matter how nice you got that picture, if you're an astrophotographer, you say, "Man, I did a great job here."
Yeah,
And now it's going to drive you to say, "I can do better." That's the mantra for amateur astronomers is I can do better.
that's true.
I see people all the time who will post pictures on Facebook, and they go back to pictures they had a year ago, and they reprocess it and post the original,
Yeah.
and then the one they have now, and it's the same data, and what they came up with is just so different. And it was
Sure.
the same data. They just had learned to process better.
Yeah, well, there's people that have been doing astrophotography all the way back to film days, and they go back to their old archives, scan their negatives or scan their slides, and find and dig out new data with the new image processing tools that are available today. So that's also very cool. This is no different than a professional astronomer making a major discovery about something and then going, let's go back to the glass plates of 1912, okay, when all these conditions were right or whatever, and then, scanning, taking the digitized glass plate or scanning that glass plate to dig out data so that they can see changes that have happened, over these years and stuff. So it's very cool stuff. Data is very, very important to astronomers. Keeping it in order and organized, and archived is important stuff, So you just never know. Amateur
Right.
astronomers never know when they're actually going to make a discovery. Yeah.
Okay, so we had a couple of questions. Book 66 on Facebook,
YouTube.
on
He's on
YouTube.
YouTube.
I have 3 screens. It's insanity.
Yeah. I'm watching it too. I'm
just looking into my first scope. Doesn't hurt to study up for the next level stuff.
Yeah, we
That's
already
exactly
brought that
right.
up, and
Yeah.
book 66
Okay.
says he's also got 15 by 70 binoculars, and he's blown away. Margie Chisholm, Channel Phil today and yesterday has posted a few pictures. Wants to know what he is viewing. Please view and give your opinion. That's too obscure for us to go chase down. So anyhow, Margie, thanks for posting. The thread here on Facebook has to do with polar alignment, and Gary Palmer says when you polar align for the night, set markers with wood strips or pegs on the ground. This should help you set up for daytime polar alignment for solar. Yeah, it's an old trick.
There's a lot of techniques to make the major thing you want to do is get a consistent setup every time, and that's manufacturing has that where you have there's processes that we go about to maintain the consistency of the product, and that's a key indicator of quality. So you want to do everything the same way. You want to choreograph your setup to be identical every night if you want really consistent results in terms of the placement of your tripod. You make marks on the ground. You do everything you can to set yourself up for success and not to waste time. So I got to the point where I was portable for about 4 years, and I set my system up over 200 times during that time. It's over an hour to set up and an hour and a half to take down.
Yeah.
Over 200 times. And I got to the point where I could set my system up and get to the point and do a polar alignment in like 5 minutes, drift alignment.
Yeah.
a drift alignment, where I could sit there and track for 10 minutes and it would not move. So that's the level of precision you can get to once you've trained yourself and you get consistent results. It's just writing down everything. It's so when you're doing setup, it's important to write things down that you may forget, or to have a checklist to understand, to get the same setup every time you set up your portable system.
Right.
I go into that pretty heavily in my book,
Yep.
Scientific Astrophotography.
Available at ExploreScientificUSA.com.
Yep.
That's true.
Yep.
Okay. So, Stephen Paul Romero, maybe I need to make a trip to Arkansas for a live tutorial. We're going to try to do this virtually, so you don't have to make that trip. But yeah, there is nothing. There's nothing like having another astronomer show you how to set up equipment. Where you can get your hands on it. It's hard to replace that. Mike Lemus wants to know, has a question for you, Kent. What do you do when Polaris is near the 12 o'clock position and you can't rotate your RA axis to that position?
Drink beer for an hour and then go back and do it again. So at that point,
How
you
about
do
coffee?
the best you can.
So
You do the
stay
best you
awake.
can. What's that?
I said drink coffee so you can stay awake.
Oh yeah, not beer, coffee. That's what I meant. I meant coffee. You just have to wait at that point. It's a tough situation, and do the best you can. And you can always try the drift method. If you have a camera, you can Google the Robert Weiss drift method.
Oh yeah.
That explains how to do it with a camera.
Yeah.
And you can align with the drift method at that point.
And I will
Or
say this about drift method. And Stephen Paul Romero is asking the question. He says, "How relevant is drift alignment today with the modern tools available?" Stephen, what drift method can accommodate for that all these other tools, I mean, the other tools get you so close, and the exposure times in general are short. I mean, your exposure times are 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Okay, so how precise your polar alignment is. It's always better to have a better one, but drift method will compensate for tube flexure, mount flexure. It accommodates. It takes care of everything. Okay, it takes longer to do it, but drift method is a relevant procedure.
Well, it's relevant in two cases, and the MSRO observatory has both of these cases. One, it's a permanent observatory, so you want as precise an alignment as you can get. So that's, like you said, that's why we do the drift method there. But also, we actually cannot see the North Star in the observatory.
Okay.
So we have to be able to go somewhere else in the sky. So the drift method is an all-sky method of polar alignment, where all these tools you can buy rely on you, for the most part, seeing Polaris.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got a yard where you want to set up and you can't see Polaris, then you're kind of out of luck unless you learn the drift method, or there's some guide like PhD2 has an alignment mode that you can use, which is an all-sky alignment also if you're going to be doing photographs. But again, it requires this other equipment, where if you want to do just a simple drift alignment, all you need is an eyepiece, and you can go to anywhere in the sky and do it.
It's nice to have a crosshair eyepiece, but way back in the day when I was doing a lot of film astrophotography, and before I even owned a crosshair eyepiece, I would get I would put a high power eyepiece in the field of view and throw the image of a star out of focus so that the star was almost actually touching the edges of the eyepiece. And then I could see drift happen real quick, okay? Because, you just had this bloated star image. Francisco Salas Suarez is in Costa Rica, and he says, here at only 10 degrees, surrounded by mountains everywhere, never able to see Polaris. How can I do a polar alignment? And drift method is going to be your best shot, Francisco, if you want something real precision. If you're just using the ExploreStars and you're doing visual work, just level the tripod, point it generally north or south, okay, so you don't have a lot of drift while you're going through the procedure, and do the 3-star alignment. It will compensate, but you have to be in the point, uh, uh, point
Mode.
mode. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The word's mode, folks.
So,
The point mode. There's a track mode and a point mode, and we've covered that in detail.
so for help adding to Francisco, one way I do it in the daytime is I use this compass, a standard navigational compass with a base plate,
Yeah.
and calculate what your magnetic declination is. So magnetic north and true north are different. So you want to be able to know what that difference is and get like a yardstick or a straight board, put it on the ground and move the board until you get it lined up what you think is true north.
Mm-hmm.
Set your tripod down with the north leg on the north end of that board. Measure the distance between the southeast and southwest legs, get it even, and now you've got, and get it level, and now you put the head on it, and you've got, get to 10 degrees, and you've got a pretty good polar alignment right there.
Well, that's for the azimuth, right? The altitude, I use the mount, so then you can drive the mount what I like to do during the day is drive the telescope so that it's pointing dead on zenith, all right, where you can calculate the coordinates to do that. Mm-hmm. It's basically you're on the LMST and you set the declination to 90 minus your latitude, I think it is. And once you do that, it'll that's what it thinks is zenith. So now you can adjust you put a level on top of that.
We need to demonstrate this.
And then you can adjust your altitude to get right on the money for your altitude.
Yeah, we need to demonstrate that. That'll be a good demonstration.
Yeah, that's an outside thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so a comment that I did miss on YouTube, Edwin Sanchez says, my photos have a big circle when I process them. How can I do better? Like the circle is bright and the outside is dark. I do use flats. What else will help? Edwin, we don't know what kind of optical system you're using. If you want to send in your photo for some analysis, you can send it to service@explorescientific.com. We'll take a look at it. Let us know the exposure time, which camera you're using, any filters, your whole image train. We need to know all of that to get a best analysis, and we can run it by. If we can't answer it, we certainly have astrophotographers who can give a good analysis.
Additionally, Edwin, and you have our email because Edwin's on the forums and emails back and forth with me sometimes.
Okay.
Send a picture of your rig as well from the side, because we would like to see from the focuser to the end of the camera so we can see how you have things put together there.
The one comment I would make about his description is it sounds like even if after he applies a flat, if he's done the flat, there's still vignetting going on. That's what it sounds like. If you stretch the image hard, you'll see that bright oval in the center, and on the corners it'll be darker. Mm-hmm. So the flat, it could be that the flat wasn't correct for that image, so it didn't correct for that vignetting, which is what flats are designed for, along with the dust donuts. So it could be related to something like that.
Bill Black asks, is Edwin using a reducer? Every element.
That's another question. You look at the whole image train. Sometimes people are using different combinations. It's very, very common for a lot of us to use different combinations of products, brands of things, special adapters, special couplers, these kinds of things. And so one of the things that a lot of astrophotographers also should do is they should look at the interior of their telescope along where the light path is going to go. Because if you have let's say that you have an anodized ring in there, anodized black. An anodized surface is very reflective, okay? Very reflective, especially to infrared light, and a lot of sensors pick it up, so these are little things to look at as a field photographer, I used to use a view camera. We used to keep little bottles of flat black paint so that we could find shiny areas inside of our cameras to paint them flat black, and it added contrast. So just little tricks. Gary
So
Palmer has some of the best advice here. He was talking about how to make a crosshair, and he said cotton thread and PVC tape makes a good crosshair. That's true. Or if he could get a spider to make something, that would be also cool. When I worked in Taiwan and watched people assemble eyepieces and the old crosshair, metal crosshairs on viewfinders and stuff. It was really interesting to watch the people do this real fine work. Gary Palmer says with most mounts, if they're set level and have the solar filter on under solar system line, tell it to align on the sun. Then move the mount head until it's in view, and it will be 98% polar line for solar imaging. Good advice.
talked about that same technique yesterday at the star party where we had a crowd and I had to get going quick, so I just plunked it down as best I could north, told it to slew to Saturn, and then did exactly that. Used the azimuth and altitude, and I had Saturn in the eyepiece for 3 hours doing it that way. So that's a great idea, using the solar filter to do the exact same thing. Set it down, slew to the sun, adjust the mount, you're polar aligned.
Very cool.
Oh, we got another question here. To answer Stephen Paul Romero's, what kind of beer, Kent? Generally cold. And then Ken N on YouTube asked, can you add a TDM to the Exos 100? That's up for Jerry. That's in his wheelhouse.
Yeah, there's a lot involved there.
Not built for it.
The TDM is designed for, the TDM is not really designed for the iExos 100, although there could be future technology down the pike. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Theoretically possible,
Yeah. The existing telescope drive master is designed, and the expense of it, is really related to a little more expensive. The Exos 2,
around $1,000. So
yeah, it's $1,000 plus some other stuff, and then so you could put it on the Exos 2. We offer it for the Exos 2 mount, which is a $700 mount, and we're going to add a $1,200 to $1,500 device on it to make it excellent. I mean, we have it on the G11 in the observatory, and it's awesome. It saves a ton of time. So you basically have to value your time to be able to invest in a TDM. You really have to value your time a lot in your observing, I think.
Yeah.
If you want to do it at the level of the iExos 100, that's you may want to invest in a little larger amount before you add the TDM to it.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that like putting a V8?
Go ahead.
Is that like putting a V8 in a Ford Pinto?
Not really.
In terms of,
I mean, but the thing is that if you look at some larger mounts, now you have the ability to use a lot more different applications, with telescopes that weigh more, different configurations that you might want to do, So if you are using a very lightweight setup and that's where you're going to stay and you're never going to move up to a larger instrument, then the iExos 100 and, more precision guiding, if you're trying to get down to that 1 arc second or less guiding performance, but you darn near get to it with the auto guider, and that's
people are getting there with that, with the auto guiding system.
Yeah, and that's
right
that's a lot less expensive way to go for the for the iExos 100, and no special any other equipment except to buy an auto guider, so that would be my personal recommendation at this point. Throwing another $1,000 at a $500 or less mount, not unheard of. Especially, I mean, if you look at it from the terms of what Jerry has said, how do you value your time? If you don't value your time at all, then then it's $1,000. It seems expensive. If you say, oh yeah, well, for every hour I can actually devote to this, with in between work and family, that time is very valuable. So.
And it definitely saves you time when you can just flip the thing on like we do at the observatory, and it just works. It's awesome because now you concentrate on your object that you're observing. You don't have to care about tweaking your auto guider, tweaking your programs, getting all this stuff working. It eats into your time. It really takes more time than people realize every night when they set up their system. That's why I did it early on, and I used a TDM for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Portable, and it was great.
Right. Amy the Astro said, I may have missed it, but how can you do a Meridian flip in ExploreStars? Because sometimes it does it later than I would like it to. Oh, how do you advance it? I see.
It's an automatic thing that's built into the code. It does it right at the Meridian. So there's no way to adjust that right now, but that could be a feature. That could be an enhancement that we could add to our list of enhancements to have an adjustable Meridian flip.
Right.
So
submit that to our...
Yeah, and join the, if you're not already on the, the groups.io for the PMC-Eight, then I would recommend you join. Certainly put that into the enhancement list request. Because that's how we advance these things.
I'm posting that link right now on the YouTube channel and the Facebook page.
Yep, it's also in the description. Okay, it looks like we've kind of we're coming to a close on this program tonight. I hope it's clear wherever you are, and that you get some sky time tonight, if that's in the cards. And do you guys, you two have any other points you want to wrap up with?
I ask all our regular users or the people who come back next time, when you join, share this stream so you can help us broaden and widen the audience and bring more people into the fold.
Yeah, liking and sharing this supports the programming that we do. Putting on a live program every day has its own challenges, but it's something we are happy to do. Yeah, for sure. More support,
also,
and
talk
that
about
support
it on the
by
forum.
sharing it helps a lot.
Yeah, talk about it on the forum. Create message threads about the topics, and so we can get some discussion going also on the forum about what we talk about on the show.
Yeah. And Mike Wiesner reports that the sky's too smoky in Arizona to do astronomy. So I'll have to look at the news and see what's happening out there.
He posted on Facebook this morning that he had been told to prepare to evacuate.
Oh boy.
So that's...
Stay safe, Mike.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow's programming, of course, we'll have our regular program here for the OpenGOTO Community Live. And then at 5:30 Central, we're going to have Gary Palmer in the UK. He's going to be talking about solar imaging, and I think he's going to share some processing techniques with us, which will be really cool. Thanks very much. And Gary, Gary Palmer, thanks for hanging in there with us as well, watching. And we'll see you all tomorrow. Take care.
Yeah, thanks. Y'all have a good day.